Okay, can everyone hear the sound of my voice? Can everybody see my screens? Do we need to shut a couple lights off? Are we good? You guys want to drop the lights just a little bit?
Yeah.
A little mood going on since it's such an intimate gathering. You guys want to flip a switch and we'll just make sure we're good here? Your weekend indoors at a library with me is pretty freaking amazing. I'm really honored that you would be here. How many of you are products of religious homes or backgrounds or it's like a self-help meeting, isn't it? Hi, I'm Seth. I've been sober for 7 years. Those of you who don't know my story, I'm not going to tell it here, except to say that I was born in a devoutly religious home. My mother and father are theologian-level believers. To give you an idea of how devout they are, they met at Oral Roberts University. They honeymooned in the Holy Lands. They walked the steps of Jesus, all of that. And I remember I was in 3rd grade. I came home from public school, and I told Mom and Dad about these amazing things I'd learned about the Neanderthal man, stuff that's not in the Bible, right? And they immediately grabbed all 3 of us still living at home, plucked us out, dropped us in private Christian school, and I attended private school pretty much through graduation and became a Christian broadcaster. I spent 12 years in Christian radio. Anybody know artists like Amy Grant, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Michael W. Smith? You guys have Christian radio stations around here, I'm sure. Right? And anyway, I finally came late to the rational party, to the atheist party, and I wanted to create an environment where people like us would be celebrated. If you come from the church, you know what this is like, right? You start to look at the Bible specifically. Hey, Methuselah lived to be 969 years old. That sounds odd to me. So you go to your pastor and you say, hey, look, the science says that people live to be around 50 in this time period. How is Methuselah possible? And what do the pastors and apologists and pundits all say? They say, come on, you're thinking too much. Right? You can't understand the mind of God. You can't put God in a box. Just turn off your brain, just go with it and take it on faith. You guys feel me, don't you? And I wanted to create a community where thinking was encouraged. Yeah, ask the question, start thinking. Let's think about these things. I am not the thinking atheist. I did a radio show a few months back with evolutionary biologist Dr. Jerry Coyne. The guy's a freaking genius. I've had people like Robert M. Price on the radio. The guy's an encyclopedia of biblical knowledge and Bible history. Lawrence Krauss was on. I got a chance to shake hands with Steven Pinker in Boston. Dr. Pinker, I was watching him on stage, and the whole time I felt smarter and more stupid at the same time. And I have no illusions. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a great philosopher. I'm not a great thinker. I'm not the thinking atheist. I am just a guy who crawled out and had some ability as a broadcaster and storyteller and producer and communicator who wants to sort of encourage other people. But the thinking atheist is an idea that we should all be thinking. We should never apologize for asking questions. So that's about it. Now, how many of you know what it's like to listen to the radio and hear a song for the first time and you go, hey, that's interesting. I'd listen to that again. And then what does corporate radio do to that song? They play it every 6 minutes for 6 months until it comes on the radio. You're driving to work, you hear it, and you go, oh my God. Click. That is exactly how I feel about the theist arguments that we have been hearing. In fact, it is the reason that my disposition as of late has been this. You feel that? Look, science gives us something new to talk about every single day. And religion comes at us with the same tired, hackneyed, long addressed arguments as if it's the first time anybody ever said it. And so this is going to be a moment of therapy for you and me as we go through a countdown, just like we might do on the radio. The greatest hits, it's 12 in a row of your favorite songs. Well, here's what I call the greatest hits of theist arguments. We'll start with Ken Ham, my granddaddy wasn't no monkey. You guys see him on the Bill Nye debate?
Oh, yeah.
I thought Nye did pretty damn good. There were a few times I was talking to the television where you just don't let him off the hook. Say it, say it, say it. You know? Followed by evolution. It's just a theory. The God of the gaps. It takes more faith to be an atheist. Teach the controversy. You were never a true Christian. To begin with, no one who ever genuinely knew the love of Jesus Christ could have ever walked away from him. You took it out of context. I had a personal experience, and that constitutes proof. You're just angry. How many have heard that one? I'm going to call that 90%. Better safe than sorry. Pascal's wager, there's a little place right there. How did something come from nothing? The eye is too complex to have evolved. Scientist X believes in God. Look, here's a copy of his book. I suggest you read it. Francis Collins and Stephen Meyer types coming after you. Hey, it's true because the Bible tells me that it's true. All belief systems deserve respect. America was founded as a Christian nation. I saw the sign on the highway at the car dealership coming in. Well, if the sign says it, it must be true. Hey, they found Noah's Ark again. There are no atheists in foxholes. If it's not true, how come it's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years? Ignore the Old Testament, read the New Testament. Where do you get your morals from? With a special bonus track, Hitler. Anybody had the Hitler grenade thrown at him?
Oh, yeah.
Is that an act of desperation or what? You bring to them proof of some sort of a scientific fact, and you bring mountains of evidence from pedigreed scientists, and they just go, it's a reflex. You've killed God because you want to replace God. You want to be God yourself. You egomaniacs. It's not a religion. It's a relationship. You going to be okay over there? Wailing and gnashing of teeth on the front row. Charles Darwin had a deathbed conversion. He died a Christian. I had a near-death experience. I was on the operating table and I floated above my body. And I looked down and I saw the surgeons. I heard the words coming out of their mouths. I know what music was playing. I know what everyone said. And I came back to my body and reported the experience. And you can't tell me it didn't happen. And that constitutes proof. There are no transitional fossils. Prove God doesn't exist. Why are you stealing my joy? For somebody who doesn't believe in God, you sure talk about Him an awful lot. You know what? I think the Holy Spirit is dealing with you. That's your conscience speaking. That's Jesus. You're going to help me out with this one. You may not believe in Him, but He
believes in you.
I'm alarmed at how many of you know this. They call these legitimate arguments. Often they call them scientific arguments. You and I call them a weapons-grade face palm. Did you guys see the face palm video that I released? Who hasn't seen the face palm video? We have 5 minutes, right? Let me play you the face palm video. I've got it queued up. It's on my PowerPoint. I normally skip over it after, but I have it next to the slide. For one thing about doing like a convention speech is I'm locked into 35 minutes. We got to go, go, go. Something like this, we get a little bit of flexibility, and I can pull something like this. Let me show you the facepalm video. Let's kill the lights for just a second. Check this out, and you will fear for the species. One more. When Nephilim 3 was talking about how that the moon craters were a product of the global flood which ejected the ice comets, I really did fear for the species. Now, of course, most mainstream Christian churches aren't teaching that type of stuff, but they are teaching stuff that is just as ridiculous, obviously. You and I know that. I was fitted from a very early age with what many people call God glasses or God goggles. They do, in my opinion, two very critical things. God glasses filter out uncomfortable incoming rays of light. It makes me squint, it makes me uncomfortable, filters those out. And they come with blinders to keep my eyes forward and up only. I'm not too interested in what's going on around me. You guys know the old song, turn your eyes upon Jesus, right? Look full in his wonderful ways, and the things of earth will go strangely dim in the light of his wonderful ways. Eyes forward, eyes up. Don't look around too much. Anybody know what this is?
Marvin!
It's the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Who's a Douglas Adams fan? The rest of you, shame on you. No, if you haven't had a chance, it's never too late to discover Douglas Adams and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Anyway, the story is that we're desperate to know the answer. What's the answer to life, the universe, and everything? So we build a computer, deep thought processes for 7.5 million years. There's huge fanfare and celebration. Come back to hear what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything, and they say 42. It's the biggest anticlimax in history. And so then the question is, well, maybe to understand the answer, we need to know what is the ultimate question. What is the ultimate question? And that's sort of the theme that I'm using for tonight's or this afternoon's speech. And I'm going to come back to what the question is a little later on in my presentation. It frustrates me, as it probably frustrates you, to live in a culture that occasionally doesn't just tolerate ignorance, but celebrates ignorance. Right? I don't know and I don't want to know. Anybody heard that? I don't care what evidence you bring. Doesn't matter what you say. I'll never change my mind. I don't want to know. I'm reminded that I was once like this little girl. Now, look at this little girl and her face, and she's holding a Bible up to her chest. Does she have any idea what is in that book?
No.
Of course not. Does she have the maturity, the perspective, to be able, the life experience, to be able to properly digest what she might be taught from that book? Of course not.
No.
Of course not. But if you were to look her in the eye, and her parents are probably standing right behind her, their chest pumping with pride, and you say, is that book true? And she says, yes. And her parents couldn't be prouder. She has no idea what's in it, but she knows it's true. If you look at this young face and you say, who loves you more than anyone else in the world? Jesus. Who loves you even more than your earthly mother and father? Jesus. And mom and dad could not be prouder. I did a speech last year that's on YouTube, if you care to find it, called Get Them While They're Young, that talks about the hyper-targeting of young children, what we call the 4 to 14 window, when they're the most vulnerable. Get them while they're young. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about what I do is the targeting of young minds and the inhibiting of young minds. And this stuff comes from the pages of Scripture. Set your minds on things above, not on things that are on the earth. Corinthians, we look not to the things that are seen, we look to the things that are unseen, for those things are eternal. If you go to Creation Ministries' website, they'll just say it. By definition, no apparent, perceived, or claimed evidence in any field, including history and chronology, can be valid if it contradicts the scriptural record. How terrifying is that? Science comes to us in 10 minutes and says, we have made a discovery that will change the world. If it doesn't fit between the first and last verses of the Bible, we kick it aside and forget about it. How tragic is that? I'm reminded of this cartoon with the candle of science, and they say, hit it with your Bible. Now, here's one of the best examples of this type of celebration of ignorance in religious culture. I'm speaking mostly to Christianity. It's my background. I'm guessing it's a lot of your background. I digress for just a second. Yesterday was my birthday, and I asked for I'm one of those guys that if I need something, I just go get it. You know, like I don't need a lot, but I'll go get something. So Natalie's like, "What do you want for your birthday?" I'm good. Well, that's not the answer that she will accept. She doesn't know what that's like. No, you're getting something. What do you want? Well, I'm working on a concept for a second book. It's still sort of it's here, and I'm not sure if it'll come to fruition. But as part of the research for the book, I wanted to visit a psychic and actually sit down at the table, eyeball to eyeball, with a psychic. Well, I'm in California, and I'm down. We went down to Ocean Beach. And there's some weapons grade woo over there. so I said, Natalie's like, "Baby, you want to go to psychic? Let's go to the psychic. Let's do it." So we went and we sat down, and I got a 30-minute reading. She comes in. She weighs about 12 pounds. You know, and she sits down. She's got everything from the tarot cards to the crystal ball to I don't know what, all manner of granules of dust of this, and they even had a black cat in the lobby. I shit you not. And it's funny, we're sitting there. Now I didn't go in to humiliate this person. I went in because I wanted to test her a little bit, but it was more of an experiential thing. I wanted to go through it so I could maybe write about it. But she pulled out the tarot cards, and she's got a row of them. She's got this, and then she starts this. And the top one was God. Now God says He has some amazing things for you. Wait a minute, let me see if I'm getting a message. Yes, God said some amazing things are coming for you. Now the God card said Druid on it, and it was a depiction of a Druid. So I stopped her. Hey, hang on just a second. When you speak about God, are you talking about the Celtic priests? Is it an actual Druid God? Does this have something to do with the Festival of Samhain and the merging of the... And you know, she cocked her head like a Cocker Spaniel. She said, well, you have to believe in this stuff for it to work. And I said, but don't I need to see it work so that I can believe in it? Huh? And then she said, well, do you believe in a higher power? No, I don't. And she took the God card and threw it off the table. Never mind. Forget this card. Natalie's about to come out of her chair behind me. Woo! I don't know how I got off on that tangent. But anyway, that book may or may not come to fruition. It's something I wanted to sort of put together. I'm not going to describe it for you. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. We'll see. Anyway, back to my theme, which was the celebration and often institutionalized teaching of ignorance. Anybody know who Joyce Meyer is? Yeah. All right. Well, for those who may not know, Joyce Meyer is an evangelist and millionaire, an author, and she speaks all around the country and all around the world. Now, she wrote a book called Battlefield of the Mind for Teens, targeted to teenagers and the parents of young teenagers. How to be a godly teen, how to raise a godly teen. And she said this in her book, and I quote, Satan will look for your child's weakest area and attack at that point. He will attempt to fill your child with worry, reasoning, fear, depression, and discouraging negative thoughts. Now, she just lumped reasoning in with worry, depression, fear, and negativity. It gets better. Watch this. I once asked the Lord why so many people are confused, and He said to me, tell them to stop trying to figure everything out, and they will stop being confused. I found it to be absolutely true. Reasoning and confusion go together.
That's awesome.
Weapons grade baseball. I have to resist the urge to inform Joyce Meyer that if she is preaching a literal Bible, she is not qualified to teach me in any way whatsoever. How does any woman champion a book that mutes her own voice, tells her that she is worth half that of a man? How does this happen? She's wearing God glasses, or she's a fake and she's filling her pockets. I can't make that call. I'm just saying. Ignorance, often fueled by fear. We'll get into fear a little bit more here a little later in my presentation. But we are taught, right? Young children right now are being taught to be terrified of this man. He did a Big Thing video recently. He was talking about how necessary it is to teach evolution. He said, evolution, the fundamental idea in all of life science and all of biology. It's very much analogous to trying to do geology without believing in tectonic plates. You're just not going to get the right answer. Your whole world is going to be a mystery instead of an exciting place. He's absolutely right. Well, of course, Ken Ham couldn't let that one go. He went online and he said, Bill Nye, who's really the humanist guy, is out to get kids and brainwash them into secularism and atheism. We need to do all we can to capture these kids for the Lord Jesus Christ. Ken Ham just accused Bill Nye of brainwashing children. But if you want to see, even in subtle ways, how the fear of non-belief permeates our culture, check this out. If you go to one of the most popular online dictionaries in the world, dictionary.com, and you type in the word godless, the definitions include wicked and evil. Don't pay attention. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Look up. Look up. Look up. I agree with Dawkins. I'm against religion because it teaches us to be satisfied with not understanding the word. Look, that type of ignorance is the reason you and I continue to have to tell people that the Shroud of Turin is not proof that Jesus existed. What did they date that thing to? The medieval era? Yep. Replicated it using an oven and some other tricks. It's no big deal. By the way, I saw this online and I just thought it was awesome. A handy decorating idea for your home. Wouldn't you like to put that in the guest room and have somebody over? Tonight you will spend the night in the arms of Jesus. It's the reason we have to tell people that the Grand Canyon wasn't created during a span of 5 minutes 4,000 years ago by a global water event for which there is no geological evidence. It's the reason we have to tell people that America was not founded to be a Christian nation. The reason we have to tell people that this is not an ark, it is a mound of dirt created by water. It's the reason that in a private Christian school in Louisiana, they are teaching that, hey, it's not so far-fetched that humans and dinosaurs could coexist. After all, the Loch Ness Monster is proof. They're teaching 9th graders that the Loch Ness Monster has been spotted on sonar by small submarines and is most likely a plesiosaur. How terrifying is that, that these kids are going to grow up and become whatever one day? It's the reason you and I have to abide photos like this on our social media pages. Anybody seen this one? How can anybody look at that and not know we're all under the arms and the hands of Jesus Christ? Not even a good Photoshop job. Here's the original photo on Snopes.com. It's the same mentality that thinks it's sensible for God to help Tim Tebow make touchdowns while 14,000 children will starve to death today. It's the same reason that... It's the same reason we have to continue to hear the argument that carbon dating doesn't work. Of course it works. Look, there's carbon dating. I'll spare you the carbon copulation slide. PG event here today. Of course it works if used correctly. Jerry Coyne, Dr. Coyne on the show, if you haven't heard the podcast we did a few months ago, you just go to the thinkingatheist.com, go to the podcast page, and you can scroll it and find it that way if you'd like. But he was talking about how dating methods are used, the different types of radiometric dating and how they are so reliable, their results are predictable. It's fascinating stuff. To hear a real scientist instead of a preacher talk about this stuff is really, really amazing. But it's frustrating to hear these charges from people who really don't know anything else and seem to be impenetrable. Their brains seem to be just shut off. It's the same mentality that says that God has picked your life partner, your spouse, your soulmate, the person you will spend the rest of your life with by His divine design. And His master plan for you to find that person is to log on to Christian Mingle. I'm sorry. Anybody here old enough to remember the Procter & Gamble scare back in the 80s? Yes. It's okay. You can give your age away. You got to own it, all right? You got to own it, all right? Well, for those who may not have remembered, back in the 1980s, there was a rumor that just ran like wildfire through the church and Christian circles that Procter & Gamble's president appeared on Phil Donahue's daytime talk show and informed the world that a portion of the profits of Procter & Gamble are funneled directly to the Church of Satan. And church members everywhere boycotted Procter & Gamble. They received over 10,000 phone calls a month over this logo. Well, you look at those 13 stars, and you know that's the work of Beelzebub himself. Now, the internet didn't exist back then, but a few questions, perhaps even a trip to the library, a look at the corporate books, maybe the public record, hell, the stock market would have revealed that nothing like that ever took place. No Donahue appearance ever took place. Those 13 stars, by the way, represent the 13 colonies, and the symbol was used because it was a time of high illiteracy. Dock workers many times could not read, so they used symbols to mark the crates, and that's how P&G was marked. But the controversy was so rabid, they had to change their logo over it, and there are people 25, 30 years later who still won't buy Procter & Gamble, just in case. It staggers the mind to think about it. Stephen Prothero wrote a book called Religious Literacy, What Every American Needs to Know and Doesn't. Now, it's amazing how ignorant we can be about science and history and all of this other stuff, but how much do we really know about the Bible? If I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, I'm a Bible believer. How much do I really know about the book I am the champion of out there in the arena? Well, he did a survey, it was like 1,000 people, believer and non-believer alike, just Americans. How biblically literate are you? And he asked some basic questions, and the results are fascinating. 60% of Americans couldn't tell you 5 of the 10 commandments. Now, supposedly, these are the most important rules ever given to humankind. Right? These are the foundational rules for living one's life, the 10 commandments. Most people can't name even half of them. They can name all the lyrics to their favorite song. They can roll off their favorite recipes. They've got recitations of all different kinds. They've memorized all types of just superfluous stuff, and they don't think about it. They can't tell you what half of the 10 commandments are. That's weird. 1/3 of those surveyed did not know who gave the Sermon on the Mount. 1/3. 75% of those surveyed believe that the sentence, God helps those who help themselves, is written in the Bible. And it appears nowhere in Scripture. 50% of high school seniors think Sodom and Gomorrah are married.
That's awesome.
10% of people surveyed think Noah's wife is Joan of Arc. You guys ever see those old late night shows where they'd go out and they'd show people pictures of the vice president and say, who is this? And like nobody knows. You know, it's frustrating to live in a culture where ignorance is celebrated. Yeah, you know what? I don't involve myself. I don't care. Right? And who thrives in that environment? The charlatans, the fakers. I was at an event. Anybody here know Aaron Ra, know his work?
Oh, yeah.
I love that guy. I love that guy. we were doing a deal together in Little Rock, Arkansas a year and a half ago called Reason in the Rock, and he said something during his speech from the stage. It was so damn good. When he was done, I walked up to him and I said, I'm stealing that. I'll give you credit for it, but I'm going to steal this, because the way he said it was just perfect. He said, ignorance is not just what you don't know, it's also what you won't know. Just incidentally, and I just thought this was sort of a funny example of ignorance and panic. Ignorance driven by fear. Anybody remember the April Fool's joke by these folks who worked at Gator Country 1019 in Florida? They went on the air and they announced to their listenership, oh my God, there's dihydrogen monoxide that's been found in the water. Panic! Panic! Pandemonium! People are calling the courthouse. People are calling the Corps of Engineers. People are calling the radio station. People are pulling their children out of school. Dihydrogen monoxide is water. There's water in your water supply. And as I understand it, the host of the radio show got suspended. They got punished because their listeners were dumbasses. That's unbelievable. Now, I would never stoop so low as to shill for my own personal wares from the podium at an event like this. I think it's poor form, and I would never participate in such a thing. Actually, I do appreciate the support. I do. The table is what helps kind of fund the work. But I really wanted to bring the book up because there's a story in the book that I think is relevant now. My family is obviously heartbroken that I'm an atheist activist. You can imagine. I mean, they see my apostasy as their failure. And, you know, we've been through the late night phone calls and the tears and the email. Anybody gotten those long emails, you know, pages and pages? And it's like they've attacked the castle walls from different angles to see which one might weaken. You know, they try the warm, fuzzy, touchy, happy, gooey angle. That doesn't work. They try condescension. That doesn't work. And they try guilt. And that doesn't work. And they try fear of hell. And that doesn't work. And it's, you know, how old do I have to be before I get to live my own life? And it was so prevalent that we couldn't have a conversation about anything without it coming up and ruining everything. I'm not pawing on their door. I'm not telling them they're broken. I'm not telling them to change their life up. But they get permission to do that to me? Forget it. I had to establish some boundaries. But finally, we had the opportunity to go to lunch. This was a little while back. And I'm like, let's go and talk like real people. Let's just be parent and child. Let's talk about stuff. Have a good time. So we went to lunch. We spent about an hour just talking like real people. It was the first time in recent memory, really, probably in a couple of 3 years, that we hadn't had this looming sort of thing going on. And when we left, I was feeling really good, like maybe this was the start of sort of the next chapter, mutual respect. And Mom looked up and she said, come over to the car, I've got something I want to give you. Shit. I thought we made it. So I go to the car, she gives me this. It's a book by Alistair McGrath called The Dawkins Delusion. Now, watch this. I said, all right, I'm game. I'm game. What's the angle he's taking? I mean, what's he trying to say in the book? And she said, well, I actually haven't read it, but I know it will help you. Right? It was enough that Dawkins' name was on the cover and the book was anti-Dawkins. Now, people on the outside see Richard Dawkins as the Pied Piper of atheism. This tells you how little they know about the free thought movement. They think we're all lemmings following our God, Richard Dawkins, over the cliff. And I'm like, you have no idea what these people are like, right? Dawkins says something, he makes a mistake, he says something that you just disagree with philosophically, whatever. I mean, those people are the first to raise a hand and say, I don't buy it. I don't like that. There are many who don't even like Dawkins. The idea that we're all just sheep to be led by another shepherd tells you how little they know. But they have to speak in those terms. Oh, you follow someone else if you don't follow God. Here's an interesting example of something else I find alarming in the church. You guys doing okay?
Yes.
Having a good time? I did a radio show with my former Christian radio boss. Anybody hear that show?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. It was a tedious show. It was a tedious show. I'm not a great debater. Dylan Hunty's much better at it than me. And he and I were just talking, and he called me up, right? He was my boss at KXOJ Radio, Christian radio, for 10 years. And he calls me up out of the blue, and he says, I had no idea that you had become this figure in the atheist movement. I want to be on your radio show. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. Yeah. I have a perspective on God I don't think your listeners have heard yet. Yeah, right. No, I'm serious. I said, is this a version of it's not a religion, it's a relationship? Because that's, we've already heard. No, this is totally new. Of course it was a variation on it. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. But I had him on the show, on a 2-hour show, and he said something I found extremely telling. Listen to his voice.
Here's my belief. Hey, you are what you are at your worst moment. You can't judge me at what I am at my best. Because my true condition is always going to be what I am at my worst. And here's what I am at my worst. I'm arrogant. I'm unbecoming. I'm unlovable. I'm self-centered. I'm greedy. I'm all the very things that I don't want to be. But yet, here's the deal. I get up every day and I look at myself in the mirror and I go, I don't have any, I've got the desire to be different, but I don't have any power.
This is actually a variation on something that we used to host at KXOJ. We called it the Abiding Life Conference with a guy named Mike Wells. And the concept is this: you don't know what I'm like on my birthday, when I'm smiling and feeling good. That's not my true condition. You know what I'm really like on my worst day. You know what I'm like when I step on something somebody left in the carpet in the middle of the night and I cut my foot. Somebody cuts me off in traffic, or when I lose my job, or my darkest hour. That truly defines me. And I wish I could change it, but I don't have any power. Okay? What does that sound like? Battered partner, doesn't it? Right? Even the Bible tells you, you're not worthy. There is no one righteous, not even one of you. Now compare the Christian God, or any deity in this context, to someone who is the head of a battered partner scenario. He's inaccessible and vague. He's jealous and has a temper. In fact, the scriptures actually say with pride, God is a jealous God. He blames us for everything. It's our fault, not his fault. He tells us we're not good enough. He threatens violence for non-compliance. He says we'll never survive without him, and yet we just can't leave him. He knows what's best for me. I'm not the thinker in this relationship. He only allows bad things to happen to me for my own good. It makes me better. It's my fault. You should see him on his good days. He can be so wonderful on his good days. It's the battered bride of Christ. I did a video a while back called Intelligent Designer. Have you ever talked to somebody who says, how can you look at a beautiful rainbow and not know that there's a grand divine painter in the sky? How can you look at a mountain vista or the birth of a beautiful child and not know there is a God? So I produced a video and I thought, all right, fine, if we're going to talk about design, let's talk about design, but let's include all the stuff they don't talk about on Sunday service. Like tectonic activity in the Indian Ocean that creates a tsunami that kills 250,000 people in a single day. Tornadoes, the flu virus, and AIDS, birth defects, animals that bore their way into the head of a live host to lay their eggs so the larvae can eat their way out while the host is still alive. Animals tearing each other to pieces in the wild. Let's talk about all this design and give credit where credit is due. Well, there's a guy named Faz Rana. He's a believer, and he runs a website called Reasons to Believe. And he saw my video and he produced a response video explaining why this has to happen this way.
If you want life on a planet, you have to have tectonic activity. No tectonic activity, no life. To have a planet without earthquakes would be to have a planet without life. And it's important to note along these lines that a recent study done by 2 engineers published in Nature demonstrates that over 83% of the deaths that result from earthquakes in the last 3 decades has been directly attributable to government corruption. That is, a huge failing on the part of humanity, not due to the nature of the world that we live in.
The reason that the Indian Ocean tsunami happened is because of our moral failing. Right?
Katrina.
It's a battered partner syndrome. I'm reminded of this famous quote: "Birds born in a cage think flying is an illness." I'm an Oklahoma boy. I was born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Last spring, we had a series of twisters. We have twisters tornadoes every single spring. And it's a fact of life. We're used to hearing the sirens and seeing the flashing red on the radar. We had some close calls last year. I was actually driving home from a speech in Arkansas. I was driving on the Creek Turnpike about 30 minutes from home. I got Natalie on the phone, and she's talking me in because there's fungal activity in the area. Horizontal rain, no visibility. I'm trying to get home. There's nobody else on the highway. And she says, there's rotation detected at Northeastern State University. And guess what was 3 miles in front of me?
Oh.
And it was after that I decided I was putting a shelter in. We put a shelter in this year for that very reason. But tornadoes have been on the brain and will continue to be if you live in Tornado Alley. Last year, on May the 20th, an EF5 twister blew through the town of Moore, Oklahoma, a suburb of Oklahoma City, 90 miles up the turnpike from me. Horrible. 200-mile-an-hour winds, 23 dead, 377 people wounded. And this town's been hit 3 times in the last 15 years. Here's the version of the damage path photographs from 1999 to 2013. Look how eerily similar they are. They have to rebuild this town every several years. It's unbelievable. Horrible stories coming out of it. Like the story of a woman driving down the street, frantically trying to escape the twister, holding her infant child in her arms as the rest of her family follows in another vehicle, and she can't get out of the way fast enough. She and her child are sucked out of the window and killed in view of the rest of their family. This is the vehicle. This is Moore Medical Center. Devastating. This kind of thing happens, and then all of a sudden you begin to see articles like this one, which was posted in the Christian Post. A Bible found in OK tornado debris open to Isaiah 32:2, providing hope for many. The Washington Post followed suit. Bible pages found in Oklahoma tornado debris seen as sign of hope in storm. This is Plaza Towers Elementary School. We were watching on live television in Tulsa. We had Channel 9 plugged into the laptop, into the television, as an EF5 rammed into Plaza Towers Elementary School at the close of the school day. Kids were all there. No shelter. They went to the basement. 7 children horribly drowned. But a guy named Danny Moody goes on Twitter and he says, "This landed on my truck in the midst of a chaotic tornado. My God still delivers." Now, I'm not trying to trod on the grief of the grieving. I understand that we construct mechanisms for coping with the unthinkable. We look up in the sky and think, I need to know that this is all part of something bigger. I need to believe in a happy ending. This is something we do as human beings sometimes to cope. I understand it. But somebody's got to say it. Because the implication is that God allowed the horrible death of 7 children and saved a few pieces of paper. And after the twister, you see the signs begin to pop up. God bless more. God bless more. They'd spray paint it on the debris and broken houses. God bless more. Pray for Oklahoma, but in my distress, I cried out to the Lord. Yes, I cried out to my God for help. He heard me from his sanctuary. My cry reached his ears. Really. Our own governor went on national television. Know what she asked for? Prayers. The hashtag Pray for Oklahoma went viral, became one of the most retweeted hashtags on Twitter. Retweeted even by our own president. Our prayers are with the people of Oklahoma. Hashtag pray for Oklahoma. Celebrities like Beyonce, Rihanna, Katy Perry, Carrie Underwood, and Alicia Keys sent prayers for Oklahoma. Ricky Gervais said, I feel like an idiot now. I only sent money. Watch this. He did his own hashtag, actually do something for. And he encouraged his 4.6 million followers to each donate to the American Red Cross.
That guy's awesome.
But if you're in the faith, you look up at this and you think, well, this is all for my good, pain in this life, bliss in the next. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that outweighs them all. In other words, no matter what happens for good or for ill, it's all part of the plan. Final example tonight of ignorance fueled by fear. Another excerpt from the radio show I did with my former boss. Now, he told me on the air that he was convinced I still secretly believed in God. Here's what he said.
Okay, this is what I want you to do. This is how you can prove this to me. Okay? Because I think you do. I think you do, and I think you have some doubts about it, and here's how you can undeniably prove it to me. I got on your website before we got on earlier today, and I think are you going to Colorado?
Yeah, I'll be there on Saturday.
Okay, here's what I want you to do on Saturday. How many people will be there?
A few hundred.
What do you think? 200. This is what I want you to do. I want you to get down on your knees, and I want you to invite Satan to come into your life. That's what I want. I want you to do. I want you to go, you know what, Satan, if you're out there, I don't even know if you're out there, but there's nothing that I want more than you. If you exist, I want you to come into my life, and I want you to have every part of me.
All right. Here's the problem, is that my days of bowing down are over. Right? And so are yours. And I don't want Satan to be the Lord of my life. It would be dishonest. Right? There's one person who governs my decisions and actions and accepts the consequences and reward for that. That's me. It's me. But as sort of a lay scientist, I believe in being thorough. So, I have concocted a petition and prayer to the Dark Lord. I would like all of you to bear witness to that prayer. You ready? Dear Satan, I am the Lord of my life. I don't believe in devils, demons, or hell. In fact, I feel a bit ridiculous talking to a character I find as real and threatening as Lord Voldemort. But as a proponent of science, I believe in being thorough, so if you exist in this host of witnesses, I offer myself as a vessel for you to prove your power. Enter my heart, my body, my soul, or whatever's necessary for proper and unambiguous manifestation. And may my own eternal damnation provide the opportunity for the rescue of others.
Still here.
That's the monster in the closet, right? And you and I aren't kids anymore. Once we got the opportunity to look into Satan and hell and how it has been used to control people through fear, we can walk away from such nonsense without fear. Satan no longer has any control over me. You know, the idea of a devil lurking in the darkness who will punish me. or a God who would allow me to be punished by the devil for non-compliance. All that's gone. It took me about 1.5 years after I actually said the word atheist before I actually shed that. Anybody else struggle with those fears of hell? Yeah, I get it. That is deep-seated stuff, man. They come after you young, and they program you to be afraid. I've had people who told me they got goosebumps and feared for me, even though they were an atheist. There was something primal inside of them that literally feared for me when I did this part of the speech. It's terrifying. I'm not a kid anymore. I pissed some people off. I tacked my prayer with this. I said, hey, Satan, as long as you're coming, could you bring me a cherry cheesesteak? That's right, Satan. You serve me. You know? I agree with Sagan. Avoidable human misery is more often caused not so much by stupidity as ignorance, particularly our own ignorance about ourselves. We're afraid to ask the ultimate question. All right, what is the ultimate question? Well, I honestly think it's different for every person. I think it is that question that sets you free. It's the question that opens up the door to all the other questions for you. It's the question that changes how you see the world. It's the question that maybe even alters the course of your life. It's that time when you thought, I'm finally going to ask. And you do it. And it changes your world. The ultimate question is asked without or in spite of fear. It's more interested in facts than comfort. It's designed for knowledge over belief. It includes the whole of humanity and not just segregated portions of it. It won't allow the answer to be a cheat. It's not afraid to hear, we don't know yet. It's asking a voice that's prepared to speak alone against a roaring mob or a deafening silence. And finally, it represents curiosity, passionate curiosity, defiant curiosity about the things that we are told we are not supposed to know. Right? The question they tell us that we aren't qualified to ask, we especially ask that question. The one they say is sacred and untouchable, that's especially the one we go after. Let's do that one first. That is the ultimate question. Well, it's a little odd for me to ask this, but I would like to finish my official presentation before we do a little Q&A, if you guys want to do some interaction, with a letter. Any of you artists know what it's like to be at a point where all of a sudden the ideas come perfectly and you're in that sort of weird Zen state, you know, you're just like, ooh, everything's happening. You know, you're in the zone. You are saying exactly what you want to say, you're painting exactly what you want to paint, you're writing exactly the song you wanted to write. You just happen to just feel it, so you found the instrument and did it. I'm on a plane going to Colorado, I'm 30-whatever-thousand feet, and I'd had this on my heart, if I can use a little religious terminology. I had this in my spirit. I feel, everywhere I go, I feel the weight on the shoulders of people who are dealing with religious parents and religious children and religious friends and employers and cultures. And every day, sometimes they beat themselves up, even if they don't admit it out loud. And they think, God, is life always going to be this hard? You know, and it adds so much pressure and intense baggage to their lives. And you know, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a great mind, I'm not any of those things. But I'll tell you what I am, I want to be an encourager. And I was on the plane, and I pulled my laptop out, and I wrote this, like this. And I carry it with me, I've carried it with me since July of last year, and I use it from time to time, and I would like to finish my presentation. It takes me about 6 minutes to read it. But I like the way I said it the first time, and hopefully it will encourage you. Okay? You learn a lot about people when you declare that you're not going to live your life their way. And there are many in this room who know well the consequences of doing something so radical, so crazy as to be an individual. A singular voice, an often inquisitive voice, with its own tenor, its own style, its own song, its own message. You and I live in a world where conformity is comfort, and we know how comfortable people can become. So many voices out there today, they're just an echo of previous generations and the generation before that, the generation before that. My daddy was a Christian, his daddy was a Christian, and you know what? His daddy was a Christian, and y'all are going to be Christians just like us. Breaking that cycle is unthinkable. And why would they consider it? Because the cloak that they've inherited feels so warm and familiar and safe. Everybody around them looks like them, walks like them, talks like them. Everyone except for you. They nod in agreement. You raise an eyebrow of doubt. They just know the answer. You know that the answer raises a whole lot more questions. They take security in walking the straight and narrow, staying on the path. You want to go carve a path of your own. But this is not what was expected of you, was it? They laid out the guidelines for how a person should live properly. And they were going to make sure that you turned out right no matter what. So what happened to you? At this moment, there are people in this room who have mothers and fathers who are carrying embarrassment and shame that they failed as a parent. Because you left the straight and narrow. You were co-opted. You were corrupted. Because you rewrote the playbook in a language that they consider to be foreign, confusing, and ugly. You had two choices. You could line up with the others, or you could walk at your own pace in your own direction for your own reasons and accept the consequences and rewards that come with being your own person. The fallout for many of you, I know, has been significant. These days, when they look at you, they only see what they think you could have been, what you should have been, what you might have been if only you'd lived your life their way. And they speak the words of love, but just barely. And by lacing it with distance and disdain, they cheapen the word. In fact, when they look at you and they say, love you, anybody had a phone call with a religious loved one and they go, love you? They cheapen the word. You get that feeling that you've just been schmoozed by a politician whose only real desire is to get you to change your vote. Yeah, they love you, but the full package, the 100% package, the unfiltered love, well, that's kept on reserve. That's going to be kept on hold until you straighten up, until you do it right, until you start acting normal. Well, for just a second, folks, let's examine normal objectively. Normal is a husband and wife married per the Bible, in a church and under God, condemning non-heterosexuals for ignoring and even desecrating the lawful and ordained marital union that they now enjoy after 2 divorces. It's a mother telling a daughter that sex is dirty, her body is dirty. It's lust, it's a sin, you're sinning. And that she's cursed by the fall of Eve in the garden, a byproduct of sin, designed by God to gain her worth from a husband that, according to the book of Genesis, will rule over her. Normal is a Sunday school teacher scaring a 6-year-old with stories of Satan and hell. Normal is refusing to purchase a new car without test driving 15 vehicles, 6 different car lots, going online and checking the accident history, the mileage, the insurance, the resale value. But they'll accept the Bible as absolute fact without even knowing who wrote the book of Genesis. It's a church communion ritual where men, women, and children get together once a month to eat flesh and drink blood. When I was in the Christian church, this was our normal. You all come out on Sunday. Sunday's communion Sunday. Get your heart right with Jesus. Bring the kids out. We're going to eat Jesus' flesh and drink his blood. What the fuck? About the transubstantiation thing in the Catholic Church, they think it's literal. It's a miracle. It's jacked up. Normal's thanking God for food grown and prepared by human hands. It's giving God the glory for providing the new house that came with a 40-year mortgage that you pay on. It's praying for safety after buckling your seatbelt, locking your doors, and loading your handgun. It's praying for healing after you call 911. The Sunday school songs, the Bible on the nightstand, the check in the offering plate, an evangelist on the television, a Jesus fish on your car and a t-shirt that says 7 days without Jesus makes 1 week. I believe this is a prison decorated to look like a mansion. And you're not going to live that way. You've made that choice. You've read the books and seen the history and learned the science and realized the world is much grander than most people ever imagined it to be. You finally found your own voice, and damn it, you're going to speak in it. You've had the epiphany that you don't owe it to the rest of the world to keep them happy. You owe it to yourself to create happiness for you and those you care about. And even though wherever and whenever you can, you say the words and you take the actions and build bridges and soften those sharp edges and try to demonstrate a love for people and a desire for a better world, but you are no longer a sheep to be led, an echo to be repeated, a cautionary tale, a bad example, shameful, perverse, broken, a freak, ugly. You're not ugly. You're beautiful. You got to figure it out, which so many billions of other people have missed. Billions have missed it. That this life is just too precious to spend living in somebody else's shadow. That by judging everyone and everything that is different from yourself, you only indict your own shallow heart. And you cheat yourself out of the amazing depth, breadth, color, culture, and humanity that's so much more wonderful than the narrow rooms we lock ourselves into and the narrow tunnels we so often choose to walk. That believing in things without evidence, faith, is not a virtue. Faith is not a virtue. It's something to be pitied. That sexuality isn't shameful. It's something to be celebrated. That the condemnation of what is wrong, even when it is called sacred, is the obligation of any and every moral creature. And that your hopes, dreams, desires, loves, pursuits, and passions belong to you and you alone. You've stepped out, to stand forward, and to stand your ground. And you know that even though you occupy a tiny speck upon a tiny speck inside this vast, 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 vast universe, and you realize that your Father is not a magician in the sky, that you're not going to live forever, and you're not going to die and inherit a mansion with streets of gold and pearly gates and all of those fantasies. You realize your life is wonderful and amazing and precious and so much more satisfying. It's the kind of life where every day brings a new opportunity to ask the ultimate question. Now, is that kind of life easy? Is it popular? Probably not. But be encouraged, my friends. Because inside this 13.7 billion year old universe, there has never been anyone exactly like you ever. And there never will be again. And you are simply living a unique life that honestly reflects that fact. And while others laugh at you because you are different, you can laugh at them because they are all the same. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Seth. That was amazing. We're going to go ahead and take a couple questions, not too many, because that way you guys can have a little more time.